Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about why you don't have any experiences when you meditate. You've probably seen videos or spoken to friends and they see colors or they see visions of some sort, or they have these out-of-body experiences, maybe they see colors, and you just have a blank screen. Your mind maybe feels quite calm, but you're not having any kind of experiences happen. And I'm going to talk to you about why that is, because there's a key reason as to why you're not having any experiences at the moment. And it's something that I've been through as well in different phases of my journey, you could say, of meditating, which for many of you know, but I started meditating when I was 6 years old because my dad was a meditation teacher. So I've had a long lifetime of meditation, you could say. And I now teach many people in my online school. So I've seen many different experiences or come across people with all sorts of variety of experiences. And I've got a good idea now of when things happen and why things happen as well. And what I'm about to teach you today is also something that's been confirmed by another amazing teacher called Mother Mira, who's a divine avatar. So when we first start meditating, and I'm going to break this down into 5 phases, as I said. So phase 1 is when we first start meditating. And this is something that many people will experience. Most people will experience this to some degree or another, to some extent or another, and that is thoughts. So you start meditating and typically you're absolutely bombarded by all of the thoughts that are going on. Maybe it's that your mind just flickers from one subject to the next. So you'd be following the breath and then the next minute you're thinking about what you're doing after work, and then you're back on the breath, and then the next minute you're thinking about what you're having for dinner, and then you're back on the breath. Next minute you're thinking about, I forgot to send that email. So your mind is jumping. It's not stabilized on the focal point. Or alongside that, sometimes separate to this, is that you will have that inner commentary going on. So that inner voice will be commentating on every single part of the process, to be saying, yeah, you're doing really well. Yeah, we're really doing well today. It's really quiet, isn't it? You know, you're stabilized on the focal point, and you'll have this kind of inner commentary going on. So they're the 2 typical, I suppose, distractions that we face when we meditate. And many people will experience this in phase 1. Now, some people will kind of jump through phase 1 quite quickly and they'll move on to phase 2. Not everyone. Some people will take a little bit longer, and sometimes it's because maybe you start when you're a bit older, so perhaps you've got a lot of conditioning to change or to work through. Some people, it can be based on their lifestyle. If you've got quite a calm and easy lifestyle, that's going to create less clutter in the mind, generally speaking. Whereas if you're stressed out and really busy and you've got lots on in your life, that affects your state of mind, and then you're giving yourself more work to do. So that's not a hard and fast rule, but for many people that will be the case. Phase 2, typically, thoughts will begin to subside. So thoughts subside, and you'll find that the jumping that your mind was doing before lessens a great deal. So you will still have movement, but you'll find that it happens a lot less. You'll also find that your ability and your self-awareness to recognize when your mind has jumped onto a different topic and then correct it, the awareness is much better, so you tend to correct it much quicker. Often, actually, as you get better with meditation, this auto-correction takes place where you're not actually consciously bringing your mind back. It's almost like an automatic process. You get, when that happens much further down the line, once you've got better at this. You'll find that, generally speaking, that inner commentary will reduce as well. And basically, the general clutter in the mind subsides a lot, reduces a lot. And it's a bit like if you've seen a snow globe and you shake up a snow globe, it obviously gets filled with all these artificial snowflakes, and you can't see whatever the image is inside, or whatever the little statue or ornament is inside. You won't see it because it's surrounded by all of these artificial snowflakes. But when you put the snow globe down and you let it rest, all the snowflakes fall to the surface and you're able to see what's in there. The mind is similar in that when we start in phase 1, everything's surrounded by all this clutter, all of these thoughts. Once we just continually stabilize the mind and correct ourselves and continue with the practice, and this this process here may take 6 months of daily practice. It's not a hard and fast rule, but that may take 6 months. And you'll find that the mind starts to quieten down. The snowflakes in this analogy settle, and you're able to see more clearly. And then we move on to phase 3. And before I explain about phase 3, I want to remind you that this process I'm outlining here is not an absolute rule. This is the case for some people, but some people will start immediately on phase 3, some people start on phase 4, some people phase 2. And a lot of that is down to the fact that as souls, we've probably had many, many lifetimes, especially if you're someone who's watching a video like this, someone that's got an interest in meditation or spiritual topics. You're very unlikely to be a young soul, to be someone who's just here for the first time. So it may be that you did a lot of spiritual work in a previous lifetime. It doesn't necessarily even need to have been meditation, just general spiritual work. Your consciousness is at whatever level, and you're bringing about these kinds of experiences straight away. So many people will start off and they will, as I say, they'll be on phase 3 or phase 4. So just bear that in mind if you're watching this video now and you're thinking, well, that doesn't actually quite match up with what your experience has been. Take into account that everyone's come into this lifetime at a different place. So phase 3, this is where people will start to have visions. This is where people start to see colours. Maybe they'll see faces when they meditate. Maybe they'll see people. Maybe they'll hear noises or sounds that aren't external. There's a whole host of experiences that you can have. People see geometric shapes. People see all sorts of different things. They typically happen when someone is in phase 3 in this breakdown of experiences. Now, there are obviously crossovers. So some people can maybe start a meditation, their mind's really busy, it starts to quieten down, and then they start tapping into these experiences as well. So this can all you can actually move through these in one sitting if you find yourself sitting with the right intent and everything has kind of aligned itself perfectly. That can happen. This is where things get quite exciting and people are very motivated and people are very excited by what's going on, and it's very easy to sit down and meditate when you're in this phase because it's so fun. There's lots happening. It's really interesting. You're learning more about yourself, and this is a really great place to be. Some people actually, and I've taught people like this, who have gone immediately to this phase. So they've started meditating, and there was a guy that I started teaching meditation to, and on our very first session together, I used to teach him in a one-to-one capacity. He started seeing colours, and like within no time he was having lots of these different experiences happen. And that was his journey. That was his phase. That's the phase that he was in at that time. And more than likely he had done other work in previous lifetimes and skipped ahead, so to speak. Now, moving on from phase 3, this is where we get to the phase that the video is really about. And phase 4 is where nothing happens. And phase 4 is a bit like a void. It's emptiness. And this is the biggest. If you can get by these phases, phase 1 is probably the hardest, realistically. But if you can get past phase 1, phase 2 is quite cool because things are starting to calm down. Phase 3 is great because there's loads happening. Phase 4 is typically when people stop. And phase 4 is basically when you've gone beyond all these visions and all the colours and all of that sort of thing. And every single time when you sit down to meditate, it appears like nothing is happening. It's just, you close your eyes, you can see the darkness behind your eyelids. You meditate, maybe you get deep, maybe you have some sensations around the body, but visually, nothing happens. Now, what's the difference between phase 4 and phase 1 and 2 is that also in phase 4, you have almost little to no thoughts. So obviously phase 1 and 2, you're very occupied with thinking, the mind is very active. Phase 4, the mind is very quiet and it's just silence, it's just emptiness. And so many people, I've seen it many, many times where people get to this phase and they say, well, nothing's happening. I'm not moving. I'm not progressing in my practice. Nothing seems to be changing. And then they'll be talking to their friends or going on YouTube and seeing people having all these things. And maybe people have just started meditation and they're having these things. And so people who are in phase 4 are like, what the hell's happening? I've been meditating for maybe longer than people who are at phase 3. But they're having all these things happen and I've got nothing. I'm just meditating and I have no experiences. Or maybe they've been meditating for like a couple of years and maybe they went through these phases and now they're there and they feel like they've gone backwards. They're like, yeah, my mind's calm. I feel I've got peace of mind. Everything's quiet, but nothing's actually happening. And it's perfectly normal. I want you to know it's perfectly normal. And this is something that I had experienced maybe 3 years, maybe even longer. I went for years and years and years. It felt like longer than that, but I think realistically it's probably like 3 years. But I went for years where absolutely nothing happened. I'd been through some of these experiences, not as much as a lot of people, but I'd been through some of these. And I got to this point where my mind was just quiet and calm. And it felt like I was at that, as I say, for like maybe 3 years or so. Nothing really happened. And then you move on to phase 5. Phase 5 is when you have a big breakthrough. Now, this is obviously going to vary from person to person. I had my big breakthrough eventually, and that was like a full-blown out-of-body experience where I went into different planes of consciousness, different planes of existence. I don't know what the planes were, but I've made videos about this experience, so I'm not going to bore you with it now. But I had a massive experience, and it lasted for about 4 days. I could go into different planes of consciousness or different planes of existence every time I meditated. It was a crazy, crazy experience. But up until that point, I was here. I was in this place of emptiness, and I was actually on a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And for the first 7 days of it, where we were meditating for 10 hours a day, my mind was so empty, so incredibly empty. I can't even explain. I remember meditating, and we'd meditate for different periods of time, but we did one that was like a strict meditation where you'd sit there and just discipline yourself to meditate without moving the body, without fidgeting, without doing anything. They'd call it aditana, which is strong determination. And those sessions were an hour long. And I remember sitting there for an hour and my mind just would not move. It was just absolutely laser-like on the focal point. And I had my own inner voice, which I could command and bring into play. But that commentary in the background wasn't there, or just to a teeny tiny extent. And the movement of the mind was just nil. It was just so stable. And I remember even at that time thinking, like, what's going to happen from here? Because I can't do any more than this. It can't get any quieter than this. And eventually, this is where that experience came through. And what was needed really was patience, persistence, intention. Still having that interest to want to know more about who you are, want to know more of your true nature. And eventually, these experiences do occur and do happen, and they give you more certainty. And I'm not saying that phase 5 is the be-all and end-all as well. I found that I went from here, more so back to here again. And the process continues, and I'm sure the expansion will be even greater next time. But this is a process that I've seen in many people. As I said at the start, it's not a hard and fast rule. I know people who have had lots of experiences like this, yet their mind is actually quite busy. So there are many people that have many unique experiences with meditation, and because I obviously don't know people's background from many lifetimes ago, it's hard to always understand why that is. But as a general rule of thumb, this is quite a common process that many people will go through. Busy mind, thoughts subside, experiences come, absolutely empty, quiet mind lasts in many cases for a long, long time. People give up because they think they've reached the pinnacle. They think there's nothing more to reach, nothing more to experience. And then bam, the big experiences come later on, and they elevate you. They give you more certainty, and then the process continues. And the goal, at least from me, is to reach God, it's to reach divine consciousness, it's to absolutely know my own deepest inner nature. And so I will continue until that happens, and I'll keep providing you with insights as I learn them on the way. So that's all for today. If you're interested in joining my online school, my meditation community, I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Please feel free to join us. We'd love to have you in there. There's 200 plus people, so it's a great place to learn and evolve. But failing that, I'll see you on the next video.